Hello everybody, I appreciate you taking the time to come visit with us today. Kind of as the title suggests, this is all about drill downs, and we're going to be looking at how you can take advantage of drill downs in your ASP.NET and WinForms applications. And I want to take a moment and talk about why you want drill downs. For me, the drill down is all about discoverability. It's about diving into your data and giving some context or giving some deeper information on all of it. And with DevExpress charting, we actually allow you to drill in really easily. The code we're going to look at has some minute complexities to it, but once you get the basic idea, you can start taking advantage of this pretty much at any time. So with that, I'm going to get right into some code, and let's start. Let's take a look at this and see what it takes. Let's hit escape. All right. So let's pull up Visual Studio here. I'm going to collapse some of this so it's a little easier to see. All right. The first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at doing this with WinForms. So I'm going to open up my drill down form. As you can see, I've got a pie chart here. And I'm going to open this up and kind of show you a few of the things that I did behind the scenes to make this a good experience. All right. So the basic workflow, what's going to happen here is the chart is going to look for me to click on an item within the chart. And when I do that, it's going to say, if it's a point I clicked on, go ahead and change my data source and display this other series, which you'll note here I have two series. I have a pie series, and I have, as a listed, incompatible bar series. Now you notice it says incompatible, and although the two are not viewable at the same time, if I toggle it and say turn off the pie chart and then turn on the bar chart, it allows me to change my chart types for the purposes of drill down, which is kind of cool. It allows me to really display the right kind of chart for the data that I'm viewing. And in this case, I'm going to use the same chunk of data. This is some sample Northwind data that shows us the average price per category for the Northwind products. And then our drill down is going to show us the individual products and their prices, their respective prices. So, all right, as I said, first thing is I have two series here. And then the second thing is, we're going to go to titles, is I have the first title, and then I have a second title, which says back to the main view, and currently it's not visible. And I make it look like a HTML link. I'm turning it blue, and I'm making it underlined. So it looks something like that. I'm going to turn that back to invisible because by default we're going to show the first view, which doesn't give us an option to go back to the main. When we switch, we'll enable this and turn on visibility. All right, so let's take a look at a few of the other little things. So as I said, what it's going to do, the chart's going to wait and watch for a click, and when it sees that click, it's going to check to see if it's one of the two areas we care about. Either are we in a series point, or, are we in a series, or are we in that back to main chart title? And the way we take advantage of basically the on-click event is there's an event, drag that down, called object selected. And there it is. And what object selected does is anytime somebody clicks something, a chart element, it fires off and gives us a handful of things we can use to check to see what was clicked. So let's go see what that looks like. So we're going to go to the code, and here we go. Let's go down here. All right, there it is, object selected. So what it's going to say is if that object was a series, and we're in series selection, go ahead and store the series that was selected and the point that was selected in a class global that I have in this class. And you'll see that it's e.object was the thing that was selected since it was the series, and then the additional object would be the series point. All right, alternately, if we're not in the series, then we're just going to throw it in this other object I have called selected another object, and later we're going to use that to check to see if they're in the title. So let's look and see what happens. After a person clicks the object selected, it calls this update controls. Now, update controls is pretty simple and straightforward. It says if we're in a category series, or I'm sorry, if we're in a category chart, which means are we on that first pie chart, check to see if we have a series and a point selected. If we do, go ahead and initialize the products chart. And we're going to pass in the point that was selected so we know which product to be displaying. We're just going to clear out some variables. And alternately, like I said, once we're in that product series chart, we're going to check to see if it's chart title. And then in the case that we are, we're going to switch back. We're going to call init categories chart. Well, let's take a quick look and actually run this and see what it looks like. Pull that over. All right, so what we have here is our pie chart. We have our average prices for the individual categories, which we see over here in the legend. And we'll see the biggest one right here is this meat and poultry. So we're going to click on that, and there we go. Just a moment, it's all swapped over to the meat and poultry products chart, which is a bar chart. We see the most expensive one is a Hruninger Rust Bratwurst. And as I mentioned before, we now have this other title up here that looks like a hot link. And when we click that, it's calling that update control, seeing that we clicked on the title, and it's calling the init categories again. So let's go ahead and close that. And also, I forgot to mention at the beginning, for anybody that has any questions, please feel free to interrupt me and ask them as they come up. All right, so let's see if there's, we're going to look at the little more complex here example of web forms. So let's see, I'm going to switch my project and open this up. Go to design view. All right. So this one this one's done slightly differently. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna point out that difference while we're still here. When I executed the inits for the WinForms version, you saw the init category. Let's look at that one first. And there we go. I'm using Entity Framework for my data binding here, so I have a little bit of a little chunk of link here that does the average pricing for me. And pretty simple, I'm just data binding the individual chart series. So you'll see the category series.data source, I'm binding to the output of this link statement. And then I'm defining the argument data member and the value data members. And that's pretty simple. I'm toggling the visibility of the titles. So the category chart is pretty simple. For the products chart, as I mentioned, we pass in that point. And what we do at that point is we pass that into this thing called getCatID. There is a field, I'm going to type it out here. If we go to the point that was passed in, there's a field called tag. And what tag is a field that stores whatever you originally data bound to. Now let me kind of explain that in a little more detail. When we initially bound the category chart right here, each row that was sent back that was contained in this categories is stored in that tag. So each series point gets the entire row's worth of data associated with it. So the upside to that is when we go over here and we need to know that they clicked on a series, I'm not getting back just a series ID. I'm getting back that entire row of data, which contained everything that was in that select statement. So the IDs, the names, the values, etc. So in this case, because I'm using entity framework and link, I had to use a little bit of magic because these are anonymous types that can't really be passed around. So I have to I used a chunk of reflection down here, pretty simple. I grab the point tag and grab the category ID. There we go. And I grab the category ID and return that, because all I'm really looking for is the category ID so that when I grab the products, I can filter them by using this where clause by category ID that I got from that method. So something I wanted to point out is that tag property is awesomely powerful. I mean, it's helpful here in the case of drill downs, but you can use it for renaming legends. You can use it for extracting any kind of information that's stored in the series point itself. So let's say the case of you want to do custom drawing of bars, for example, but you don't want to do it based off that tag property to pull back any property that was associated when it was originally data bound and make any kind of intelligent decisions or formatting or whatever you need to do. You can make those decisions from that. So it's pretty cool. All right, so let's get back to the let's go back to the ASP.NET. All right, there it is. So it's the same chart, same data. Again, the category view. Although because this is ASP.NET, and for those of you who aren't familiar, our ASP.NET charts render as an image. So obviously, an image by itself isn't generally clickable unless you use image maps or something alike. But the thing we include is a full client-side API. And let's take a quick look and see what code I have in here. Let's see. There we go. Client-side events. I'm using the object hot tracked and the object selected. And let's look at the object hot tracked. What I'm doing with this is I'm saying that if we're in the category or we're in the title, just like with the win forms, I'm going to change to a pointer, the little finger icon versus the default, which is the standard arrow pointer. Okay. Now, notice, as I said, this is a client-side event, so there's no postbacks, nothing like that. We have the ability to detect and make decisions on the client here for our mouse pointer, which, of course, gives us a better user experience. All right, and let's look at object selected. All right, so again, we have this, just like this previous one on object hot track, we have this hit in category or hit in title, and it's just a simple chunk of JavaScript that checks to see if we were in a series or in a chart title, and to see if the series we're in is visible. All right, and then we call the process on server, which calls the object selected event on the server as an asynchronous callback. So if you set process on server to true, which in the case of we're in the category or title, we have the or there, yeah, gets set true. So if that's set to true, not only do we run our client-side code, after we're done running our client-side code, we also do the async callback to run object selected on the server side, which we're going to take a look at right now. So let's go take a look. All right, let's scroll down to the object selected. There it is. So we check to see, just like before, if we're in a category chart. If so, we grab the point, and we know that if we're in a category chart and they click the point, we can call the init products chart, which is very, well, I don't want to say, it's similar to our other one, except I'm not data binding the individual items to the data, to the series themselves. In this one, what I did is data bound the series as a whole up here. So, I'm sorry, that's the categories further up. There it is. So at the beginning, I bound products, and then under categories, I bound the individual categories. So here we go. All right, come back over here. All right, so what I'm going to do, what I do here is I'm getting that category ID like I did before, but this time I'm setting its data filters because the product series already has is already data bound, and instead of setting up two distinct data bindings to the series themselves, I'm just going to filter out. I'm going to grab all products, and I'm only going to filter out the ones that are selected from that category ID. So, sorry, not the ones that are selected, but I'm only going to filter out the ones that fall within that category. All right, so let's go back and look. So there's the object selected. And then on the other case that they clicked a chart title, so if they aren't currently in a category chart, we don't want to do anything other than check, see if they clicked title, and if they do, we call the init categories chart, which you can see here is pretty simple. We just do a bind on the categories and display that category data from here. There it is. So there's bind categories again, that entity framework chunk of link there, and the binding of that data. Sorry, that's old there. And we're setting the argument data member and the value data member. So in both these scenarios, the way I did this was to swap out the series. So set one to visible and set the other to invisible. So that's one way to go about it. Alternately, you could load up a whole new chart and data bind based off of whatever you found in the tag property. So instead of doing a drill down, I could drill beside and have a second chart that was next to the original. And I want to look at one more, and I'm going to use our demo center for this. This is our MVC drill down. Now, when I click, you notice it goes to a new page. There we go. Let's take a little look here. Now, because of the way MVC works, we're using partials. And what I have here is I have two partials. I have the category partial right here. So this partial is going to draw a chart with just the category. And there we go. Oops, I'm sorry, I had that backwards. This one is, although it's labeled that way, this is actually the original. This is the average price by category. And like the web forms and the WinForms versions, we're just displaying that original pie chart, and we're going to use the object selected event, similar to what we did before, but with a slight difference, and that is, here it is, oops, yeah, right here, under object selected, you'll see that instead of checking to see if it's series and then going and swapping out that series, we're actually calling a different action. And that action is drill down, and that we'll look at that in a moment, and we're passing in the argument. Kind of like before, instead of pulling another tag though, we're just going to pass it as a parameter. And we'll look at that action real quick. And there it is. Drill down. All right. So in the case that you're on the original category chart and you click a pie slice, it calls this action. And what this action does is takes a look at the category that you'd passed in. You see there, it's grabbing the view data and using the category key there. And then it's calling, or it's changing the model. So if we're on categories, it does that, and then it passes it to the drill down view. So let's look at the drill down. There's the drill down partial, and there we go. There we go. And actually, that's the one we want to see. And then depending on which you choose, so in this one, I'm sorry, yeah, there we go. I looked that wrong. There we go. The second time when you actually click a pie item, it determines whether or not you had passed that category key in part of the URL. And depending on whether you had that category key, it will show you the drill down partial. Otherwise, it shows the drill down category partial, which is actually the product page. So let's back that up and summarize this real quick. So for MVC, unlike the other two, we aren't just turning on or off a series. We're actually showing a completely different chart based on a URL parameter. In this case, it's which category they had chosen. If they hadn't chosen a category, we're assuming that we're in the original default view, and we're looking at all of the items. Let's go over here. So the original default view, you get all of the categories, and when it's clicked, there we go. You'll see the category becomes confections. Once it does that, the controller checks to see if this key is present. If it does, instead of rendering the first view, we render a second view, which is a completely different chart, showing us this bar chart versus the pie. So let's take it back again a step further. To summarize, you have two main methods you have to care about, and that's your object selected, and that's for all of these. That's for the ASP.NET Web Forms, ASP.NET MVC, and for WinForms. You pay attention to what was selected. If series was selected, we grab the series point data, we store it for later, and then we either toggle a series as we did here, or we switch views if we're in MVC. That's the big piece. Then the second one, I guess actually, the second one is only really relevant if you want to make things look a little prettier, and that is, let's pull up this really quick, the pie chart. So the finger, this is the object hot tract. We use the object hot tract to swap from a standard arrow to the finger. Again, this is just for a better user experience, allows us to differentiate and let the users know that this is something they can click on. And something else I didn't show you is when you actually click on this, because we're using async callbacks, we handle all that code. I don't know if you saw it, but for the brief moment it took, we got a little loading dialog that pops up in the middle, so this is usable for anybody without having to worry about page refreshes, anything like that. It's nice and usable and allows them to take advantage of this without having big wait times. All right. At this point, I've pretty much covered the bulk of it. Like I said, there's the two methods, the object hot tract, the object selected. It's a pretty basic process for all cases. You know, it's about looking and seeing what point was selected, passing it off to some sort of data filter or a new query, and either toggling a series or displaying a new chart in the case of MVC. So this is I really like the idea of drill down, and I think it's quite useful. I am interested if anybody has any scenarios where they're using drill down already. I would be interested to hear if you have anything. Also, additionally, I didn't illustrate this here, but I'm only drilling down 2 levels. You could, in theory, drill this down to whatever depth was appropriate for your data. Especially, I mean, in the MVC example, you could build, you know, multiple partials and have an extremely long chain that would be pretty easy to set up and give your customers a way to drill down in a very detailed way. So in this case, you know, I'm drilling down into product categories. You know, it might be interesting to even click further and see, how many orders somebody purchased for a particular, or how many times a particular product was purchased in this case. So once you understand the basic concepts, the using of object selected and the changing your data types, really you're just limited by whatever you can dream up or whatever's appropriate for your app. So Amanda, I think at this point I'll open up to any questions we have.
Okay. Hey, Brian. So we do have a question. Is the test code for the web drill down chart available?
It is, actually. If you go to, I'm going to go to demos.devexpress.com, and if you go to the extra chart suite, under miscellaneous, there is a section titled Drill Down, and up here in the corner there is a tab called Code, and it actually shows this very well. And also additionally, this demo shows you how to not only show the average, which is what I used, you can also show min and max. So it shows you how to not only do drill downs, it also shows you how to change and shape your data at runtime, which is pretty cool.
And then from Carlos, is it possible to create a drill down to a grid view instead of another chart?
Absolutely, Carlos. I mean, you definitely have to change things up a little bit. Right here, as I said, I'm just swapping out series, but you could definitely take the object selected event and perform any action that was appropriate, be it showing or hiding a grid view, or toggling any other data in your UI would be pretty easy, because again, you have that point.tag property, which gives you that whole data row. So you could drill down at just about anything you want and then use that to drive your new data into, say, a grid view. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So that is all the questions that we have.
Awesome. Well, everybody, let me pull up my contact info here. So right there on the screen, brianw@devexpress.com is my email address. My Twitter is BrianDevX. I definitely would love any questions, any comments you have regarding this webinar, or anything else you want to see in charts, really. This is what I do day in and day out, and I love this stuff. So if you have anything, please send it my way. If you want to see any samples, or if there's something you wish I'd covered a little more, or a little, you have a little more particular scenario, again, please use one of those two ways. Pop me an email, chat with me on Twitter, let me know what you need, and I'd be happy to put something together. And that's what I've got.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. All right, everybody, we have a whole lineup of webinars that are currently posted throughout October. We have amazing guest presenters and, of course, our DevExpress product training. You can check all our webinars out at devexpress.com/webinars. Our last webinar of the week tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, ASP.NET. Show a pop-up warning before session timeout with ASP.NET evangelist Mehul Harry. And then a quick peek into next week, Monday, August 29th, ASP.NET Scheduler 101 with Rachel Reese. Learn how to create, data bind, and manipulate the scheduler, everything you'll need to get started. And then Tuesday is our Ask the Frameworks team, XAF and XPO. This is your chance to get your questions answered and let us know what you think about the framework, what the Frameworks team has been up to. So join us at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and ask away. We're also taking your questions in advance. So you can email webinars@devexpress.com with XAF in the subject. If you missed anything from this webinar, or you want to review any previous webinars or check out hundreds of online product tutorials, please visit us on the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. Again, thanks so much to Brian. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks for choosing DevExpress.